Today, we're bringing on Henry Washington, a seasoned real estate investor, educator, and mentor. He's going to share his story on how he got started in real estate without money or formal real estate education, and how he's built quite an impressive portfolio. I'm Kathy Fettke, and welcome to The Real Wealth Show.
You're listening to The Real Wealth Show with Kathy Fettke, the real estate investor's resource.
Today, Henry is going to share his journey from a panic attack about money and not knowing where to turn to building a huge real estate business. And make sure to stick to the end because Henry will give our investors some advice about the current market cycle. Henry, welcome to The Real Wealth Show.
Kathy, it's so good to be here.
I can't believe this is the first time. So because of that, I want to introduce you to our audience and just give them a little bit of history about what you were doing before real estate and what got you in it.
Yeah, before real estate, let's see, I went to school to be a software developer. And so I was working in the tech industry. I worked for Walmart designing software and doing some data analytics. And so I did that and it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed the work, but I wasn't very good about dollars. And so I often didn't have any.
It's amazing how quickly they can disappear.
Absolutely.
And then you had a panic attack, is that right?
Well, yeah. So I realized I didn't have a lot of money and I was okay not having a lot of money. And living paycheck to paycheck, or even worse than paycheck to paycheck, like paycheck to credit card to paycheck. And then I got married, and then my wife was not okay living like that. And getting married really shined a bright light onto my inadequacies as
That's what we do as wives.
as a financial planner. It was the first time I realized that like my poor financial decisions were now having an impact on somebody other than me. And a lot of things happened between us getting married and then us trying to buy a home together and me realizing that I could not buy a home. My credit was not in a place to allow me to do that. And so like my wife had to buy our first house and allow me to live with her, which was very kind of her. And I just realized that even though I had done the things I was supposed to do in life, go to school, get a degree, get a good job, that I still couldn't afford life like I wanted to. And so that's what led me to the panic attack. I woke up in the middle of the night freaking out about money, worrying that my wife would figure out one day that I look good on paper, but the math wasn't mathing anymore, and she was going to leave me at some point, which is all totally false. But when you're freaking out, that's all the thoughts that you have. And so at 3 a.m, I started to Google how can I make some extra money, because I figured if I could make more money, it would solve my problem. And that's when I started to learn about real estate investing. And the first thought in my head was that, hey, there's lots of people buying houses and making a bunch of money and investing in real estate. So I'll just take my bad credit and no money and become a real estate investor to solve all my problems. And
easy peasy.
And the rest is history.
Oh, so I think you're my first interview of just a Google search.
Yeah. Oh,
Go
yeah.
Google.
The Google search led me to like Bigger Pockets articles where I saw that like regular people were doing this. Mm-hmm. And so that next morning I woke up and contacted a friend of mine who I knew was a real estate broker and investor. And I said, hey, can you help me figure out this real estate investment thing? And she was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, I'm serious. And she was like, all right. So she brought me a box of books and told me to pick one of the books and read it. And if I read the book, then she would help me. And so I just picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad out of the book because it was the only title that I recognized. I had no idea what it was about. No clue what it was about. I just recognized the title name. And so I was like, I'll read this one because I think I've heard other people talk about it. And that changed everything, obviously. And then from there, she started to kind of point me in the right direction. I started to go to real estate meetups. I really took on the identity of a real estate investor. I had no idea how to do it, but I was just telling everybody that that's what I was doing. A, I was super excited about it. B, I don't know, the world is just, you get what you give in this world. And so if you want something, then you should be that thing, like put that out into the universe, and then the universe will return the things to you that go with it. Like, right. That's why your parents tell you, if your friends all jump off a cliff, you're going to do it too, right? Because you
They
get,
follow the
yeah,
flock.
and that's why it's so important to like pick the right friends. Because if you pick a bunch of knuckleheads, you'll get knucklehead problems. So you want to be a real estate investor, go hang out with real estate investors, and you'll get what they get.
It's amazing what happens when you see the light, so to speak. You read something, you hear something, and really nothing can stop you. And you just like, same with me. I went to all the meetups, I read all the books.
Yeah.
Rich Dad Poor Dad definitely helped me see things more clearly. I know most people have that. What was it about Rich Dad Poor Dad that got you sparked up?
It was a few things. First and foremost, it was just the overall realization. Like, that was the first time I was really learning like how money worked, um, and that you don't have to trade time for money. And it was just eye opening because everything was so contrary to what they teach you in school.
Mhm.
So the general concept was just eye opening to me. But what really stuck out was the concept of paying yourself first. I'm a big mindset nerd, and so like just the whole concept of like, hey, put 10% away and just see if you can still pay your bills. Chances are you probably can. And if you can't, then you force your brain to get creative to help you figure out how to make the ends meet, right? Which is what we would do if you pretend like, if you just didn't have money when you woke up tomorrow, your brain would go into like overdrive to try to help you figure out how to make the ends meet. And so like that pay yourself first was a way of like putting your brain into that position to help you figure out how to make ends meet, but you pay yourself first as a bill. And I just never thought of it like that. And so that's really the first thing I did was we just started setting aside 10% of our income. And it was amazing to see that like life really
It
didn't
works.
change much. Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing really changed. We were just saving money, and it became a game almost. Um, because once you start seeing that savings account grow, you don't. You start thinking about, okay, well, what can I do to get some more in there? Like if I made an extra buck here or there, if I, saved some money doing this or that, I wasn't thinking about what I could go buy with the money anymore. I was thinking about, let me go put it in this account and see how much we can grow it. It was pretty life changing.
So there's a little bit of vulnerability at that phase where you like you can finally see this potential, and you start going to meetups and talking to people, but you don't really know that much and you don't really know who to trust. So there's this excitement combined with lack of knowledge that gets people in trouble. So how did you get into your first deal kind of under those circumstances where you didn't really have the money, but you're getting a lot of influence?
Sheer foolishness.
Okay, say more.
I call it foolishness because it sounds like it from the outside looking in, but it was it was it was interesting. So I found my first deal because I took on that identity of a real estate investor. I was just telling everybody that that's what I did. I'd never bought a house, but I knew I was going to figure it out.
Yeah,
And so I would say that's the first thing you have to have is that mindset of like, it's not can I, it's how can I, right? And
it's
which
like
is
when
another,
and yeah,
yeah,
it's happening.
which
Yep.
is another concept in the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. So
Yeah.
and so I just knew I was going to figure it out, and I don't know how to let people know that I knew that. I just knew that I'd figure it out. There's so many people in the world doing it. I just felt like they're no smarter than me. Like if they all figured it out, it's figure outable, right?
Yeah,
So
I totally know what you mean. I had the same thing. Like, wait, these people haven't even graduated from college, and
yeah,
they're richer than me.
it's
I
figure
never
outable.
thought I could be. I could do this.
And so I was telling everybody as an investor, and my buddy of mine called me in a panic. And he was like, dude, I heard you're buying houses. And I said, yeah, I'm buying houses. And he was like, great. I need you to buy my house. And this is a good buddy of mine. So I knew which house he was talking about. And I was like, all right, what's going on? He was like, man, I moved out of it like a year ago. Somebody from church moved into it. They're just covering the mortgage. They were supposed to get their credit together so they could buy the house. And then I was going to take the money from them buying the house, and I was going to go buy this piece of property for my church. And now it's time for me to buy this piece of property for my church, but they can't buy the house. I don't know what to do, but I got to sell it in 30 days and I need this money. Can you buy it? I'll sell it to you for 116,000. It's worth like 165. I don't care what it's worth. I just know I need to sell it for 116,000 to get the exact amount I need to go do what I got to do. So if you can buy it in 30 days, you can have it for 116,000. And I was like, all right, I'll buy it. And he was like, okay, what do we do? And I said, I don't know.
I don't know.
I had to literally Google how to buy a house without a real estate agent, and it told me that I needed to we needed to sign a purchase and sale agreement, and then I had to Google what's a purchase and sale agreement, and then I downloaded one of those off the internet. Terrible legal advice. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
But great hustle advice. And so then we signed this contract that I printed out at work, and and then I had a contract. I was under contract to buy this house, and he was like, "All right, what do we do?" And I was like, "I'll be right back." So,
I'll get right back to you.
right. And so I was like, "I need money, and I don't know where to get money." So I was like, "I'll just go to a bank." And see if they'll give me a loan, because I just was like, that's what people do, right? When they want to buy a house, they go to a bank and they get a loan. So I went to the bank closest to my office on my lunch break, which happened to be a community bank, a local community bank. I did not go there because it was a community bank. I had no idea that that's what it was. It was just the bank closest to my office. So I walk in the lobby. The commercial loan officer, happened to be in the lobby. And he's the one who asked me if he could help me. And I said, I want to buy this house. Is there somebody I could talk to? And he looked at the contract, took me in his office, Googled the address, and he was like,
Dude.
this house is worth a lot more than this, right? And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
That's
He
why I
was
want to
like,
buy
yeah,
it. That's why I need
exactly.
money.
And he was like, well, man, I would love to do this deal for you. And he kind of just explained the commercial loan for me. He said, we'd loan you 85% of the purchase price, 100% of the renovation costs. You just need a 15% down payment. Do you have a 15% down payment? And I said, yep. I did not have a 15% down payment. I had $1,000. I needed about $15,000 or $16,000. So I wasn't going to tell him that. So he was like, okay, well, and he kind of like sent me all the paperwork to start the process. I then left the bank, and I called up some real estate investors from the meetups I've been going to, and I was asking everybody, like, how can I find the $15,000 I need in 30 days? And most people couldn't help me, but one buddy of mine like brainstorm with me. Well, what really happened was I couldn't find the money in a few days. And then I called this buddy because I wanted him to buy the house, because I was like, dude, I can't find the money. I told my friend I'd buy it. He's in a tough situation. I know you can probably buy it. It's a good deal. And he told me, he was like, bro, he's like, I'd buy this house. It's a good deal. He was like, but if you're going to be in this business, you better figure this out. Like, you better figure out how to buy it. And he sat there and brainstormed all these ideas with me. None of them are going to work. And then he was like, well, you got a job. Just use your 401k. And I was like, I'm not crashing out my 401k. There's too many penalties. And he was like, no, you can borrow against it. And so he explained the whole process of borrowing against a 401k and how you're just paying yourself back with interest to yourself. And if you rent the property out, technically your tenant's paying back your loan for you. And you should have enough money between the rent and the cash flow to do that. And I was like, man, this is a great idea. We should do this. I just got to find a 401k, because I have one of those either. And so I had to call
Details.
my wife. Yeah, no big deal. So I called my wife and told her that we needed to borrow 15 grand from her 401k, and she was like, yeah, let's do it. So we did.
Good girl.
We bought the house, we raised the rents, we started the cash flow, it started to pay off the loan. And then the banker called me after we closed and asked me, did I want to take out a line of credit on the equity so that I could go buy more deals? And he basically told me, he was like, dude, the next one you bring me, just use this line of credit as your down payment, so that way you don't have to spend any money of your own money. And then if you rent it out, you can just refinance it and pay off the line of credit. Or if you flip it, you can just sell it and pay off the line of credit. And so he was like explaining the BRRRR method to me before there was like a fancy name for it back then.
Wow.
And that's how I learned to do my first real estate transaction with not a ton of my own money. And that's what really that was my proof of concept. And from there I was hooked.
Grit is what it takes when you
Yeah.
when you're you can see it You see other people doing it. You're like, I can do this. I love all the things you said. You did. You just no stone unturned. I'm
Yeah.
going to talk to the banks. I'm going to talk to people at the meetups. That's how it works.
Yeah, I think a lot of people make decisions for other people. They decide they can't do something because of the circumstances, right? Which,
Yeah.
like I said, I had bad credit and no money. I had no business saying I'm going to buy houses to solve my problem. But if I would have let my level of information that I had at the time stop me, like most people would have, I wouldn't be here, right? And so I just decided I
Yeah.
was going to keep pushing forward until someone could actually stop me. I wasn't going to stop myself. And too many
Yeah.
times we stop ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Okay, and this was not that long ago, right? Was this
2017.
2017? Fast forward to 2025, and what's your portfolio like today?
Got about 100 and somewhere between 110 and 120 rental properties, and we flipped 18 homes last year. So we flipped 15 to 20 homes a year.
Amazing. So, given the theme of like, there's always obstacles, right?
Yeah.
But the dream has to be stronger than the obstacle. That's the bottom line,
Yep.
and then you can overcome it. So, what would you say are the current challenges you're facing in today's real estate market?
Several current challenges. Obviously, people's brains go straight to interest rates. Interest rates are higher than they were a couple of years ago, but they're not as high as they've ever been. They're still, in my opinion, they're still fairly reasonable, and I don't know that
Yeah.
they'll be going down anytime soon. But I think the challenge isn't the actual interest rate. I think the challenge is that banks are still operating on principles that don't exist anymore. In other words, like if you want to go get a loan from a bank, especially like a commercial loan to do a rental property, right? They're going to look at that property and they're going to look at they'll assess you as a borrower, but then they'll look at that property and they'll go, well, this property doesn't cash flow, right? Because they're just looking at year one. They see what you're buying it for. They're seeing all your expenses and they're going, well, it doesn't cash flow. And so they don't want to lend to you because with the interest rate, that property doesn't cash flow. They're not looking at 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, how well is that property going to cash flow? Whereas, 3, 4 years ago, you could buy a property at a 2, 3, 4% interest rate. It was going to cash flow immediately, right? And so they're still evaluating deals based on that principle. And this is the first time in our lifetime where both interest rates were at a higher place and pricing was at a higher place. So banks have been evaluating based on year one cash flow since their existence because real estate prices weren't that high even when interest rates were high. So you can make properties cash flow. But now you got high prices and higher interest rates. And so things aren't cash flowing. So it's harder to get money, which can be a challenge. And so you can get money now still, but a lot of the times the money you're going to get from an institutional lender, hard money lender, or even like a structured private money lender are going to be at very high interest rates. You're going to be paying 10, 11, 12, 15% interest on that money. And if you want to use the bank money, they're going to expect that property to be cash flowing. And so money is either harder to get or expensive, which is causing a problem. Not an insurmountable problem, but it causes a problem. It means you have to now underwrite your properties um, uh, better so that you can buy them cheaper so that your deal can absorb those higher costs. Another challenge that we're facing is, the traditional BRRRR method is more challenging now. So
Well,
traditional,
you just for our audience who doesn't know what is a BRRRR?
yeah, yeah. So a BRRRR is when you buy a property and then you renovate that property, and then you rent that property out, and then you refinance that property.
BRRR. Yep,
RRR,
that's what it is.
and
Yep.
then repeat the process, right?
Yep.
And so that became really popular over the last few years because what traditionally it meant is that you could buy a property. Let's say you put 20% down, you then rent it out, and then you go to refinance it at its new higher value, and then that higher value is increased, and you're able to refinance that property and pull all your cash out. Well, with interest rates higher now, and taxes and insurance higher now. When you go to do the refinance on those properties, sometimes you're not able to pull all your cash out. Sometimes you can't pull any cash out. Sometimes you got to bring cash to the table. And so we're those are some of the challenges we're facing right now. Some of these deals that we are refinancing, we're either having to leave money in them, we're not being able to refinance all the money out, or we're having to bring some money to the table, which isn't the end of the world. So I bought a lot of my deals without using any of my own cash. So like I would buy properties. Like I said, I was using the line of credit for the down payment, right? So at the end of the day, I don't have any money in the deal. And now when I'm going to refinance the property, I'm now having to put that money into the deal because with the interest rates and the higher expenses, the refinance, I can't get the properties to appraise for enough for me to pull everything out, and it won't cash flow for enough to pull everything out. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing.
And these headwinds, are they wanting you to back off and stop, or are you still forging ahead?
No, no, I don't want to stop at all. Most all of these headwinds can be mitigated by you underwriting your deal. So you have to change your underwriting as the market changes, right?
Hmm.
So you have to evaluate your deals differently when the conditions of the market are different. And so now I know so in other words, the price point that I would buy a deal for now is a little less because I have to underwrite more holding costs. I have
To higher expenses.
to
Yeah.
hire the expenses,
Yeah.
and so and so no, we're still going. I'm just buying deals at less for a less percentage. So let's say 3 years ago, I could buy deals at um, 60 to 70 cents on the dollar. Now I'm having to buy them at, you know, 50 to 60 cents on the dollar, right? Same
Hmm.
deal. I just have to buy it cheaper in order for all the money to work out at the end, in order for me to be able to afford the interest rate, in order for me to be able to afford all the additional expenses.
And as a flipper, I want to really emphasize, man, you gotta
Yeah,
you
yeah,
gotta get that deal. You've
yeah,
got this. Most of our audience is more buy and hold, so that
yeah,
may not be as important. But if you have a big renovation that you've got to do,
yeah,
you better be getting the property at a good price. And so I
yeah.
really want you to say that again, because too often I hear people just, oh, I got a good deal. It's 20% off
No,
retail.
yeah,
And yeah, but how much is the renovation going to cost you?
right,
So did
right.
you say 50 to 60% from its
Yeah,
retail value?
we're typically buying I honestly buy between 40 and 60 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
That's where we're
'Cause
doing
that
it.
gives you
That
room
gives
to
me
do the
plenty of room.
renovation,
The,
to the holding costs, the higher mortgage, all that.
yeah, the other challenge is also the market is just slowing down. Inventory is creeping up. It's not where it was pre-pandemic, but it's still creeping up. And again, we have all these conditions working against us with higher interest rates and higher prices, making affordability hard for buyers. So if you're flipping houses, it's going to take you where it used to take you between 0 and 30 days to get an offer you want. Now it's taking between 30 and 90 days for you to get an offer that you want, which means you're holding that property for 1 to 3 months longer than you used to have to. And if you're borrowing money at 10, 11, 12, 15%,
Mhm.
that's a
That's
hefty
money
payment
out the
each month
door.
that you have to account for. So all of this has to be accounted in your underwriting, so you can kind of fight those battles.
Yeah, that's what's so, again, for people who don't flip properties, you have to understand that you're both a buyer and a seller. And generally, you're either in a buyer's market or a seller's market, but you have to be able to perform in both. So, like one of the advantages today is that with higher inventory, it's good for buyers. That's a buyer's market. There's more to choose from. But if you're flipping, so it's great. Like for me, I'm going to buy and hold, right? So I don't have to rush to sell it. But if you're buying a property in a buyer's market where there's more inventory, but then you have to turn around and sell it again, now your property's got a whole lot of competition, a whole lot of other properties out there. So how do you overcome that?
You just underwrite longer hold times and you keep an eye on the market.
Mhm.
Things are still selling, right? They're just taking longer to sell. And so you truly have to understand your market wherever you're investing to understand how long you should underwrite your deals for. Some markets are moving much faster than others. Some markets are just going super slow. And so you need to understand what you need is a great investor friendly real estate agent who has their finger on the pulse of this data so that you can ask them these questions or they can provide you this data so you can see how many homes are selling each month. Where are they selling? What price points are they selling at? Are they first time? Are they beginner home prices? Are they mid tier home prices? Are they luxury homes? All this data will help you know what kind of properties to go buy or how long it's going to take the kind of property that you have to sell. And you have to underwrite that into your offer on the front side so that you can afford uh, to hold that property longer. As long as the properties are selling, it's fine as long as you can account for that hold time. So what you don't want is you don't want to be stuck holding the bag in a market where things just aren't selling at all.
Yeah.
And so you got to
Because then
keep
you're
your
going to have to
finger on the
reduce
pulse.
price.
Yep.
Yeah. Or rent it.
All right.
Okay, so with that, we're talking about increased mortgage rates, but also we're seeing increased costs of materials and labor, and certainly with tariffs. So, do you have concerns right now that your material costs are going to go up with these tariffs?
Concerns, not necessarily concerns. It just is what it is, right? Again,
Yeah.
it's more adjusting the underwriting. So, and paying attention. If materials costs go up 20%, then your rehab budgets when you're underwriting your deals need to go up 20%. Right, your material budget needs to go up 20%
Yep.
to
It's all
account to be
about
able to
math.
afford that. So you just have to adjust. And the problem with this isn't like, yes, adjusting your underwriting, it seems like the easy thing to do. It's the right thing to do. The problem is not everybody is doing that, right? And everybody has a different buy box. And so all of these things that I'm accounting for in my underwriting is essentially meaning I need to buy the property for less than I would have last year, less than I would have, last month, right? And which means my offer is getting lower and lower. But not every investor is doing that. And so if you're in a market with investor competition, if they have some sort of leg up on you in terms of materials, in terms of what their exit strategy is, if they get if they're exiting as a short term rental, they can pay more for a property. So I'm making lower offers and other investors are making higher offers, which means in order for me to keep my current deal flow, I've got to make 2 to 3 times the amount of offers I would have had to make in the past because my offers are so much lower than they used to be. I'm getting a lot more no's. So I have to increase the volume of offers too.
All right. So, if, for new investors, what strategy do you think would work for them in this market?
New investors. If you're a brand new investor, I think the house hacking strategy is still the best strategy to get started with, just
And
because,
and please describe what is a
yeah,
house hack?
yeah, a house hack is at its core, house hacking is monetizing your personal residence, right?
Hmm.
Most
I'm a
people,
big fan. I'm a big fan of house hacking.
most people see house hacking is buying a multifamily between 2 and 4 units, living in one of the units and renting it out. But like I said, at its core, it's just monetizing your personal residence. So you can do it with a single family. You can live in a single family and rent out one of your bedrooms on Airbnb, or you can live in a single family and rent out garage space to people who need to store stuff somewhere, right? Like finding ways to monetize your property to offset your mortgage is essentially house hacking. And so, uh, I think the best strategy for new investors is to do that. Buy a multifamily between 2 and 4 units, no more than 4 units, because you can qualify for uh, uh, a home buyer program, home buyer loans. Meant for people who are going to live in the home. So you can get an FHA loan to buy a 4, 3, or 2 unit. You can get a conventional loan to buy a 4, 3, or 2 unit. You can get a VA loan. You can get a RD loan, and you can live in one of the units and rent out the rest. So you're only putting between 5% or less down with those loan products, which allows you to be able to afford to get into those properties. The other thing that's cool about those loans is they consider the income from the other units as your income, which means you, on paper, make more money than you do with just your job. And so that helps you qualify for higher loan amounts because typically these properties cost more than just a traditional single family home. Um, you can even do this with a NACA loan, which is like 0% down, zero closing costs, no fees to you, really. And so that is a great way for you to buy property. Because let's say you use a FHA loan, buy a duplex, live in one unit, rent the other. You only have to live there for a year legally before you can do it again. And so then the next year, you can buy another duplex and do it again. And then you'll put 5% down. Let's say you did that for 3 years. You just moved every year. You could end up with 6 units where you were only putting down between 3.5 to 5% and then now all those units are producing income. If you never bought another property again in 30 years, those are paid off and they're providing you income for the rest of your life. That's a great way to get started.
That's golden advice right there. That's good stuff. Okay, and if you already have a great job and you're making income, well, of course, at Real Wealth, we can help you build your portfolio too as a more passive investor. It's important to understand there's the active people who don't really have money and need to kind of I don't want to say suffer a little bit, but maybe just a little bit at the beginning. You have to rent rooms out. Rich and I did that. If you're not at that place in life, you can afford your house and just want to invest in real estate. That's a different kind of plan. Of course, at Real Wealth, we help professionals build their real estate portfolio again in a more passive way, so you don't have to know how to use a hammer. Henry, it's so fun to have you here on the Real Wealth Show, and I look forward to having you back again soon.
Thank you for having me, Kathy. I love talking to you, so anytime.
Oh, likewise. And thank you for joining me here on the Real Wealth Show. If you haven't left a review yet and you love our show, please do that. I read all of them and it really makes a big difference. You can also follow and subscribe, and we love that too. I'm Kathy Fettke. Thanks so much for joining me here on the Real Wealth Show. We'll see you next time.
Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, go to realwealthshow.com.